Hello, welcome to today's ICMI webinar. We're glad you've joined us for Start Your Engines, how gamification can drive contact center retention, engagement, and performance. I'm Tim McElgan, the editorial manager and principal analyst at ICMI, and I'll be your host for today's session. A few housekeeping announcements before we get started. If you have any technical difficulties during today's session, just hit F5 to refresh your browser window. If you need assistance, please click on the yellow help icon below the slides and you'll get that assistance right away. We encourage you to ask questions at any time during our discussion. We ask you to just type those into the Q&A window on the side of the screen and hit the submit button. Due to the amount of ground we want to cover today, we'll wait until the end to start answering those questions. Anything we can't get to, we'll get back to you offline and make sure we answer those to the best of our ability. Any additional resources that are related to the discussion can be found in the resource list widget located in your console. I hate to sound uninformed, but I'm not entirely sure whether we have any of those today or not. And finally, today's presentation will be available on demand shortly after the completion of this live event, and you'll receive an email reminder for that once that becomes available. And with that, let me introduce today's ICMI experts. There we go. Nate Brown is the Senior Director of Customer Experience at Arise Virtual Solutions. Nate's a perpetual student of the world's greatest experiences and the people who create them. Having spent the first decade of his career managing a complex technical support environment for occupational health and e-learning software, Nate transitioned to customer experience in 2015. After authoring the CX Primer, Nate was named the CX Influencer of the Year by CloudCherry in 2019 and a top global CX thought leader by TrueRating, Reminder, Procedure Flow, Live Help Now, Litmus World, Exceeders, Natomi, Survey Sensum, Matsum Kumar, iAdvise, and ourselves here at ICMI. As a passion project, Nate created the CX Accelerator, a first-class virtual community for CX professionals. He currently serves as the Senior Director of Customer Experience for Arise Virtual Solutions and can be found at a variety of conferences, speaking and training on the CX topics he loves. Welcome, Nate.
Thank you, Tim.
Next up, we've got Kunal Rohalkar, founder and chief product officer of Data Games. Kunal began his career as a big data architect, enterprise architect for companies such as HP, Deloitte, Vodafone, and Accenture. This led him to discover his true passion, developing call center solutions that drive agent engagement. Kunal formed Data Games in his garage 4 years ago and went on to win a Stevie Bronze Award given for startup innovation. Since then, Data Games has experienced tremendous growth with 60-plus enterprise customers all over the globe and over 10,000 users. Just so everybody knows, Kunal got up early and he's joining us from Melbourne, Australia. Welcome, Kunal.
Thanks,
and
guys.
Finally,
Thanks,
certainly. Finally, Vern Fernandez is the Senior Manager of Contact Center Excellence, at Jabra, our sponsor and host for today. With over 20 years of experience in providing voice and networking solutions, Vern provides thought leadership on intelligent endpoint devices to improve customer/agent experiences, decrease average handle times, and maximize contact center investments. His team accomplishes this through development opportunities for real-time analytics, diagnostics, agent self-coaching, gamification, and by exploring use cases for artificial intelligence through Jabra's digital devices, integration partners, and alliances. Welcome all three of you. I'm really excited. We're going to have a great conversation today.
Thanks, Tim.
And with that, we're going to jump right in. Let's start out by doing a little bit of a level set, talk a little bit about the impact of the current work environment on the call center space. I'm going to start with Vern. What changes do you see that's recently taken place in the call center work environment that's generating renewed or greater interest in gamification?
Thanks, Tim, and welcome everybody to the call. We've been just taking a look at what happened, during COVID and when agents had to go home. Many of them were at home, beforehand. And we found out that in that process, there are a lot of agents that want to stay home, or we've got to figure out a hybrid situation. And so how do you do that and still provide the same amount of support for the agent, the same amount of motivation for the agent? How do you provide flexibility for that agent while still maintaining the need for data from the call center? So I think that there's a lot to be said about creating that space where they can have fun while they work, right? Because that's what they had before. And we see a lot of trending going on in the market where we've got, who's the agent of the future? Is it that person playing games all day long with esports and stuff? And is there a place for them to go to outside of when they're playing games? And is that a market that we can tap into, as agents and stuff? So how do we make it fun for that kind of new millennial coming up through the ranks, right? So I think there's a lot of trends going on right now that point to a flexible type of work style for an agent, depending on the type of, call center that you are. But then just making it as fun as it was when they were there. I also see trends around supervisors. Supervisors had to figure out, how do I motivate this team, And I know that ICMI has done a lot of studying in the past about, how they had a hard time adjusting as well, in addition to the agents. So what tools do we provide them to be able to have a great contact center environment? So those are some of the trends that I kind of see coming that really create the perfect place for gamification in a contact center.
Gotcha. Great. Kunal, can you give me your game, or give us, pardon me, your gamification perspective on that question?
No, it's a great opportunity, right? And we're looking at, we did a survey here in Australia, right, with a bunch of agents, and about 600 participated. They actually came back and said they want to work from home, and it's actually a big part of satisfaction for a lot of agents, right? Which is a surprising stat. It's surprising and not surprising. Surprising because, we thought people would like, office environment, office setting, but apparently a lot of people are enjoying the flexibility of working from home, not having to commute and things like that. What it also presents as a challenge is, how do we keep these people motivated? How we train them, right? But also what we are seeing is number of people leaving the contact center who are actually working from home has actually gone down, as opposed to people who are coming in person and looking at things. And this is probably very Australia-centric stat. Globally, there might be different numbers and different stats in there. But it just shows you that this flexibility is adding an extra dynamic to the overall workplace, right? And gamification in itself lends itself to get people to communicate, collaborate, and work together. I mean, gamers always work. I mean, when I was a gamer, I would be sitting somewhere in Australia and competing against guys in US and Europe and everywhere, right? It gives you that opportunity to connect and work with each other. And I think that in itself is super exciting, and how we can sort of keep them. And the last point is, some people, contact center, 80% of contact center agents are Gen Ys, right? Some of the agents we're seeing started their careers in 2021, okay, when the pandemic was at its height. So they started work from home. They don't know anything better, right? So if you ask them to come and work from office, it's going to be a very different experience, and probably we have to do a different survey at that time. And that's why we actually think the new people that are coming into the center and people who already been there, I think it's a refreshing experience just from what we are seeing, and to engage them and keep them motivated. Gamification is a perfect tool.
Sure, and I think we're all pretty sick of the new normal / next normal, but the reality is this is reality now. It's not going to change drastically. It's going to be part of our lives from now on. Nate, you and I have had some conversations around gamification, and certainly you bring a strong perspective in terms of the agent or employee experience in the call center. What's your view on the changes that are happening?
Yeah, thank you, Tim, and great answers, Vern and Kunal. I love this topic. I've been a victim of very bad gamification as an agent. I've also been a manager who has perpetuated bad gamification. And somewhere in that process, I learned a few things, some unexpected things of what stuck. And so I think I have a few things to be able to share in terms of, wow, I didn't think that would work, but it did. And let's look at some of these trending things. And Kunal's talking about this. The contact center is not what it was. And this was already happening before the pandemic struck. But I mean, we have morphed into an upskilled environment. I mean, let's look at what an agent is now. I like to call them a knowledge curator, because I mean, they are now feeding intelligent automation capabilities. They're curating knowledge. They are making a marriage happen between the customer's need and the information of the business. So, I mean, they have superpowers in this regard. And we have the rise of customer success, which means it's not just about, hey, let me answer your question. Hey, customer, let me answer your question. Everything is becoming more proactive, and we're upgrading our support capabilities to now consider other parts of the journey and to be more in that mindset of maximizing customer value, which is the work of customer success. That's happening now under one banner. So it can be really intimidating for us as legacy contact center leaders, but it's also tremendously exciting because we get to leverage new tools and techniques to help upskill our people, upskill our own mentality towards these trends that are happening. And gamification plays a tremendous role in this.
Great, thanks. And I'll put in a little plug. Nate's just recently put out an article on customer success, and I encourage everybody to get in there and take a look at it. Let's move on with our level set and really just talk about what is gamification. What are we talking about here today? Maybe we should have started with that, but we didn't. So, Kunal, let me start with you. What exactly is gamification? What are the elements of a gamification solution, and why is this an effective motivational tool?
Yeah, so gamification at its core, and it's a great question, and yes, we should have started right at the start. But from gamification point of view, what it does is it applies game mechanics to the real world scenarios. So it could be as simple as, Fitbit, for example, that people are wearing, and you go for a walk, it shows you what's your target, how you're tracking, and gives you badges and rewards for actually hitting your target. So it's as simple as that. What we are trying to achieve in the industry is we're trying to bring that philosophy of a data science back into the context. And I guess, Ned, you touched that very important point. Now, customer success and agents are like a superpower. I just literally imagine Iron Man, like with all these different superpowers when you have to communicate with customers, right? So what's very important is that overall data and understanding of that data, right? And giving that information back to customers. There's just so much. There are policy changes, new things coming, and digital channels also are playing a part. So for example, if I'm a customer, I would have gone through my mobile app or chat bot and things like that before I make a call to the contact center agent. So I might be already a little pissed or a little dissatisfied, right, in that scenario. So when I come to an agent and start talking to them, we want them ready. We want them switched on to be successful or provide that customer success. And what gamification is in that context is that glue, which says, hey, if you actually do this right, we're going to give you points, badges, rewards. I mean, it's hard to perform all the time, but if we can give them all their data insights and make it simple and little small things and keep improving their performance over a period of time in a guided way, that's what gamification really, really means to me, at least today. And that's what we're seeing across our customers. How we make it small, bite-sized, but give them rewards for performing simple things and keep doing them rather than making it too complicated for them.
You're on mute, Tim.
I think you're muted, Tim.
I muted myself once. Usually somebody else is doing that for me. Vern, from your perspective as a technology provider, how do you view gamification? What's your approach to it?
So, when you game, there's a win for people, right? And to me, the win is for the agent to feel happy about their job so that they feel happy about talking to their customer, right? And as a device provider, we worked with Canal pretty closely on being able to provide the right devices to be able to, me as an agent, I'm simulating being an agent in a very busy coffee shop with grinders and steamers going, and you can't hear a single thing, right? I'm at a Starbucks, Nate, right? I've got mine too. So, but agents start at home, and then they want to possibly work at a coffee shop like this, or they're van lifers because they're millennials coming up, and they just want the flexibility of being able to do this. And from a device standpoint, we want to be able to camouflage them wherever they go, so that they can be an agent, depending on the type of contact center that you have. So this is a very specific headset made purpose-built for a contact center that comes with not only the ability to cancel all this noise, and it's busy. This is not a backdrop, right? This also gives the data that you need for the contact center to run the games. So if the data is based on crosstalk or silence, or if it's based on, like, I can tell you the decibel levels coming from this room, from this headset, that's the information that Canal is using to gamify and collect that data, collect all the other siloed data, and then actually create a game out of that, right? So it takes a lot of different things to put this together. But from our standpoint, being the device, our first thing is to make the agent happy, and then our second thing is to empower other things within the environment to make the agent happy. So if you are pushing knowledge, right, because of speech to text, you can't have all this crosstalk or this false positive coming through. You need to hear it crystal clear while the agent's having fun and living the life that they want to live, right? So to me, gamification is about winning all over the place, the business and the agent themselves.
Great. Nate, where do you put gamification in your just sort of overall context of the contact center?
I'll be brief because I think these two absolutely nail it. I mean, Kunal, starting with that definition, I mean, that is my textbook definition. It is game mechanics into the everyday, period. There's all kinds of game mechanics. Let's look at Wordle. I mean, that's taken the world by storm because it's so simple and it's so fun. Brilliant game mechanic. Let's just put something just a little bit challenging out in front of people and have it just take 2 minutes. Oh, by the way, it's incredibly easy to share and have a shared experience with your friends and family. Phenomenal game mechanics that are built into such a simple thing. We can do that every day. And my favorite resource on this topic is Prime to Perform. It's not a gamification book, but what it is it's a book about why people work well. It is human psychology, what motivates people meaningfully. And gosh darn, if you wouldn't guess, the number one thing that causes people to work well over time is play, which is not throwing a ping pong table in a break room. It's not having a hot tub. That would be really weird. That's probably not a good example. You know what I mean? These remedial things that we do to outsource gamification by just writing a check. It's bigger than that. It's more philosophically based than that. It's bringing a sense of curiosity and excitement to the work itself. So you're connecting excitement and these good positive motivators to the actual work. So what Vern is talking about is brilliant. You have an agent that wants to serve. That's a motivator. That's a powerful motivator. But as soon as they have friction that prevents them from serving well, and that could take the form of technology and devices, that could take the form of a lack of knowledge. And there's a brilliant report that was put out there recently that the average agent spends between 30 minutes and 2 hours every day just trying to find remedial knowledge that's trapped inside of a person. Think about the burnout with that. So when we use gamification to drive people towards better behaviors, to share knowledge, to reduce friction for each other, to be more collaborative, and to serve well together, it's amazing what happens.
Great. Thank you, Nate. And I'm going to stay with you, Nate, on this. And you know, as with all forms of game, instantaneous feedback is critical, right? Otherwise, you're going to lose. But how important in this context is real-time feedback and guidance for agents? Are there any downsides to that kind of constant, up-to-the-minute feedback that need to be kept in mind? I mean, obviously, it's not something you want to eliminate from your gamification program, but is there something in that you need to keep in mind as you're designing it?
Oh, this is an intelligent question, Tim, and I think we could dive really deep into this. So I will be brief here, but I think it's important, one thing especially, as we talk about using gamification in the context of feedback, which in our world is going to translate to quality assurance. We have a tendency to make it over competitively based, where suddenly customer satisfaction scores and things like that are translating to points and putting some agents on a pedestal. When you have a winner, what else do you have? A whole group of losers. So it's not about creating a single winner. It's about creating the team, as Vern said, creating a team of winners where they together are able to serve the customer, who really, in this game that we play, the customer should be the hero of this story. To use StoryBrand by Donald Miller, they should be the ones. We get to be the guide, and that's a critical role. We should love that role, and we should be helping each other in that. So real-time feedback, I mean, having a culture of trust and transparency where it's not just coming from quality, it's coming at a peer-to-peer level. It's coming from leaders who are able to just have good, transparent conversations with their people. I mean, gamification can actually poison this a little bit if you're not careful. You got to use collaborative levers and using gamification in such a way where you're motivating each other to serve the agent next to them well. Or serve the agent in Australia, you know, also working from home really well. Let's start there. Let's motivate those behaviors in an exciting way. That's what's going to make the biggest difference.
Great. Vern, anything to add on that?
Yeah, these are very special people. We deem them as communication professionals, right? They, like Nate said, they want to serve. They want to make people feel happy. They hate the friction, and the way that we see it is when we take a look at the headset, it's like a carpenter. They have to have the best hammer. They have to have plumber has to have the best wrench. Soccer player has to have the best cleats. And when you're an agent, you want the best tool that not only allows you to serve well, but focus well, collaborate well, maybe even be your key towards moving up in the company into marketing or sales and, having a career path, right? Because these agents know everything about the service and the product, and that's knowledge that you just don't want to lose that easily. So to make it fun for them to kind of move around the company, there's all sorts of wins just with that, right? So.
Excellent. Kunal, anything to add in from this topic?
Yeah, and just like amazing, Nate and Vern, right? Like that's perfect. See, the thing is, and I guess Nate, you touched on that point, right? When we say feedback, people thinking quality, right? We actually are very careful when we give anything real time, right? We don't call it real time feedback in our business. We call it either reputation mechanic. We use reputation mechanic, so we enlarge your reputation as a team or as an individual. So if you did something cool, right? Like with headsets, we're actually turning the colors of the headsets as an entire team. So imagine you're working from home and you got this little patch in front of you, which is the Vern, I don't know if you can show that, the little controller that we have with Jabra headset. So what we're doing is the other games, we're actually pushing notifications into that controller. There you go. And that controller changes colors, right? As a team, imagine that. And there you go. You got the disco lights. There you go. So the point is that's reputation. And that's a social mechanic that people are working from home. You can't see it. We used to do simple things, right? We will say, hey, if you did amazing, everybody will clap and we change the lanyards and things like that in real environment when people are working together. We don't have that, right? So instead of giving feedback like, oh, you didn't do really well on this particular call, or you should have said that, which could be delivered in much different way and said, hey, take this challenge, and if you do go back and train on what we did incorrectly, you have 500 points, and if you do that, your team scores more, and guess what, your colors are going to flash and your team is going to be recognized or create that social impact within the business that this is a team that collaborates, and that just sort of touches all those different points. So yeah, real-time feedback is super important, but whether we call it feedback, I'm not sold on it.
Sure. Now, well, those are my words. I'll take ownership of that for sure.
No, that's but I guess they used quite a bit in the industry in general. That's what I was sort of referring to.
Certainly. So obviously, data collection is key to gamification. There's constant back and forth interaction between what the agents are doing and what data they're reacting to, what data they have access to. Vern, what sort of data is collected to feed into a gamification solution, and how does that happen?
From our standpoint, from Kunal's standpoint, he's taken all the siloed data from the contact center. From our standpoint as Jabra, the headsets themselves have a chipset inside of them that can produce data. I can tell you the decibels in the room, who's talking on the call, is it the customer, the agent, is there crosstalk or is there silence? I can also have a screen pop if my boom is in the wrong place so the customer doesn't have to say, I can't hear you, right? All this is data that Kunal can gamify. And he was referring to the lights, and I'll take my headset off first a bit, and you can see the red light here. So that light can change colors. And I can do that on demand. So you can push data to the headsets themselves as part of the game, which is what Kunal is doing. Now, so that's data that you can take from the headset. Now we have people using that data to understand the decibel levels at their outsourcers per se, right? To understand if a call center in Guatemala is really loud and if that can become a CX problem. We have people taking a look at how do I route calls around noise depending on how loud it is around. Even though you can't hear this around here, it may be distracting. Maybe I want to route calls based on that information. We see these data points as like a car, right? Like a Mercedes or something. There's cameras on the left, cameras on the right, sensors in the front, sensors in the back, and they're designed to keep you in a lane, right? As a car, to be a safe driver. For an agent, the IoT data coming out of our headset is very much the same. It allows the agent to stay in a lane that, that's either gamified or not, of being the most productive agent, right? So, and they get the real-time feedback because you can create conversational coaches out of our data, right? Real-time as well. And then the last piece that I'll mention is that if you're taking any kind of sentiment analysis, or if you're taking speech to text for keyword searches to push knowledge and things like that, you can do it in this type of room or in a crowded call center, and that's other data. So we actually see AI as a stakeholder for what we create in our Jabra headsets, so that people like Canal or the partners involved can actually take that and create their own AI based off of our data. So that's
Sure.
In our standpoint, that's how we approach, the customer.
Sure. And Kunal, Vern mentioned that, you're taking data from all over the place to feed into these gamification solutions. How did, could you just, obviously we could do 2 hours on that all by itself, but if you could just kind of run us through it quickly in terms of where do you get the, where do you get that data?
Okay, so real quickly, the premise of the data, and we applied patent for it, to actually identify the best agent. That's our idea. And what we want to do is we want to take the best agent, figure out what is it that they do, and make other agents perform like that. So we're taking all kinds of different data sets, right? So we're taking data from Jabra headsets, right? So I'm looking at one parameter is what makes somebody a best agent. They're probably not sitting in a noisy environment, or they have an office, and it's pretty hard to achieve if you're outsourcing in the Philippines or different parts of the world, right, where people may not have as much room. But what is it that these people are doing? So that could be one of the parameters, right, to deliver better customer experience. And we take all those different data sets. We take data from quality, we take data from contact centers, we take data from CRMs, but we also go and assess, should agent be actually taking this particular interaction? Can IVR help? Can chatbot help? So we actually first start with that, saying, hey, should the call even be answered by an agent? Can we reduce that? And if call does come through, what makes somebody a good agent? And if I'm joining a contact center, I may not be that person, but day one, but through gamification, we're creating a path for you, because I guess, Nate, you mentioned you can gamify wrong things, right? And we actually really worried about that as a business in general. So we take data the most seriously, because we believe data triggers gamification to the highest level. That's just how we look at it. That's why we call ourselves data games, as data games in America, like data and then games.
Gotcha. Nate, any perspective on that point?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think it might be prudent to maybe introduce an example of gamification that I've seen out there. I've actually used this one at a contact center that I managed. It's a little easier in person, but it's completely possible regardless. I got everybody just a base Lego base, just a green basic Lego base. And as they perform certain behaviors that we were looking for as knowledge curators, hey, look how they added to the knowledge base there. Look how they helped this individual with that call. We were just giving them miscellaneous Lego pieces. And they would build these structures that were a representation of their ability to serve each other and serve the customer. Quality scores were a part of this too. They were awarded Legos. And the creative things that they built, I mean, it was an expression of their own personality. Somebody built this incredible divine beast from Breath of the Wild, Zelda. And it was just this incredible thing. It's like, wow, what a cool legacy that you've built here as a representation of all the people that you've served over these past 2 months. I mean, so that's just one small example of connecting something fun and simple, easy to do, with the work itself there. And so, Tim, to go back to the question here around data, I think the question you're going to ask me, or maybe you're about to, is around some of the metrics and what can we do with these metrics. So the first metrics that we can impact using gamification intelligently is our employee engagement score, which hopefully you have. I mean, that's like, something you really definitely in a context, a need to have that employee engagement score, because burnout is such a real thing in our environment. And that can kill us in terms of our ability to get momentum as a team when we see people leave too quickly with all that talent and all that knowledge. So we want them to work really well, and we want them to work for a duration of time. It's great when they move on into other areas of the company and can be an ambassador for customer support in those areas. but we definitely want to retain them and have them to work and be engaged while they're there. So that employee engagement score, number one, that retention score, number two. But then as we look at the overflow into the customer impact, you should see an impact on CSAT, on customer effort score, because suddenly knowledge is more available. Because people maybe something like a knowledge-centered support type of system where you're supporting that using this gamification lever. So when you see these things actually come to life in a contact center, the customer will feel the impact of that. They know immediately if their agent is engaged, if they're happy in their job, that is somebody that has the confidence and capability to be the guide, to bring you towards your definition of success as a customer. So that's what we want, is somebody with that spark, that ability to serve well. Your customers are going to reward that every time.
Sure. Yeah. Great. And we've kind of covered how data is used to create the game portion solution, but Kunal, obviously you're not relying exclusively on technology to make judgments. You're not relying on AI to figure out what's good, what's bad. This stuff needs to be managed by human beings. Obviously human in the loop is inevitable if you're talking about gamification, because otherwise it's robots playing chess. What data, how is data presented to, let's say, contact center leadership management, and is it typically shared outside of gamification? Are there any issues around that?
And it's such a great question, right? Like, you don't want to present data which is solely reliant on AI. AI is evolving and we're learning. Okay, so we wouldn't say that we figured out all the different scenarios. Like, for example, Jabra headsets giving us data telling us, right, that mouthpiece from here to here would have an impact on an agent. On a customer experience, never even thought of that as a data point, but that is a data point, and we're constantly learning and evolving our model. The first thing that we do is we don't actually take our AI learnings to agents directly. We actually think team leaders and managers are a first gate, as Nate was saying, right? Like, hey, when he was running the contact center, he actually would create these scenarios for the agents. And we actually think these are the scenarios for agents that managers can create. So if managers see something as a data being presented by data games, we want them to look at it and say, is it really relevant for the agent? For example, you had you struggled on your quality score, or you did not keep your calls under the limit of time. Okay, and AI comes to you and says, hey, Tim, today you got to do better. But as a team leader, I would know better. You know what? Nate had a real tough day yesterday. There was a personal issue. So rather than me challenging him, I should be actually giving him a badge for showing up to work today. And those things are pretty hard to understand in the current data landscape, but that's where we want to learn. And we want team leaders to give more inputs to us from AI perspective and say, hey, the reason badge was given is because of these scenarios and those emotions. And as we start capturing them, we get there. But right now, there's so many different parameters, and that's the beauty. But the other thing, which I think, Nate, I absolutely loved is, yeah, we can do all of this in computer, and what can we do outside, Tim, is physical stuff. Like, if I could physically build a Lego box or something, when I can touch and feel it, and if it becomes real, I think gamification goes to the next level, right? Whatever we can do to make it physical. And that's why we were very keen to partner with Jabra. Like, we changed the headset colors. Now I can actually touch and feel things, right, rather than it just all being virtual.
Yeah.
Right. And that gets right back to the original point that we discussed, which is the difficulty of continuing to create contact center excellence in this increasingly remote world. Like, how do you, as you said, it's one thing if everybody's looking at each other and you're next to each other and you're cheering and patting each other on the back, but these things get much more complex and much more important, I would argue, in this remote first, digital first type of world that we're moving into. Okay, let me see. Where are we here? I just want to make sure we're covering all the bases that we can and not repeating myself too much. Right, we got all of that stuff covered. So you touched on this, Nate, and I think we've discussed it, in some detail. But could you give us a little more idea, like what sort of KPIs that contact centers typically track that can be improved by implementing a gamification solution like this?
Well, I mean, let's think about this from the mind of an executive that you might be trying to sell on a program like this. This is a brilliant time for an A/B test, to do a pilot of a gamification program. Think about a couple of these levers, some virtual, some physical, other things, where it's like we can sprinkle in a little bit of excitement and collaborative magic into this work. let's take this group of people and try out this program. And you see what the metrics do. Whatever CSAT related metrics, whatever customer focused metrics you're using, see how they're impacted. Whatever employee focused metrics you're using, see how those are impacted. If there are like sales related activities, those are going to be impacted, because when people are incentivized towards these behaviors, then you're going to see those percentages goes up as you close on those opportunities. So get your executive involved and excited for this. This is where curiosity comes in as a lever, right? You get to say, hey, we have this interesting idea. Let's try this out. I think these are the metrics that might be impacted. What do you think? And then they're like, oh, this is interesting. I have skin in the game. I want to see what happens here. That's how you get executive support. You don't come to them with a report and a white paper and say, this is what will happen. You say, hey, I think this could happen. Let's experiment with this. And then they're excited to participate with you.
Great.
Tim, I wanted to mention something about that, because right now, I'm sitting in a place where all this noise is going off, and many agents will just mute a lot because they think that it's bothering the call and the CX portion of it, and what we can do is provide the analytics to show the agent that, hey, you can work in 68 to 75 decibels with all this going off and have confidence in your tool, so you don't have to interrupt the customer, and you can still be free wherever you want to be, right? So this is called freedom, is what we offer to the agent, and that's very motivating. But we can also give you the metrics and see in an A/B test, does this help with AHT, right? So to have confidence in the tool that you're using.
That's interesting, because it also, to some degree, go ahead. I'm sorry, come on. Go.
Yeah, sorry. No, I just wanted to add to both what Nate and William said. And I mean, the curiosity, right? That's so important. Like we're talking about metrics, right? Which are standard defined CSAT, average handle time, Net Promoter Score. All of these are very boring, mundane metrics. You as an organization may discover on the back of gamification that your metrics to deliver your customers are completely different. And you might start measuring completely new things. We have seen that many times, right? Like, for example, voice as a quality with Jabra headsets. That's never a matrix, but now we're seeing it. If we actually have agents focused and have the headsets close to them, it does have an impact, right? It's funny. Agents who are putting customers on mute for a longer period of time, we know that they lack knowledge, and that's why they're looking for information and asking people questions and things like that. So, sharing knowledge, why is that not a KPI, right? That can be a KPI. And if you structure your KPIs a little bit differently, and gamification would do that. And that's why that executive sponsorship is super important. At the end of the day, I want to improve my CSAT, my NPS, and things like that. But down below, the language can be different. And that's when you actually tie your agent up to your customer experience director and deliver end-to-end performance.
Sure. Yeah, that's great. And I personally am constantly fascinated by and stressing the importance of knowledge management, right? So especially in a high turnover environment like this, you don't capture it, you're losing it, it's walking out the door, and you're poorer every single time that happens. But the other thing that struck me as you guys were discussing this is it gives the agent, you said, you can, am I good enough? Do I sound, and I don't mean performance-wise, but do I sound good enough? And what it gives the agent, it would seem to me, is a little bit more insight into what the customer is actually experiencing when they talk to them. And I think that that's a really big deal as well. And I had a thought earlier that I forgot to mention. Nate, you were talking about those Legos, and Kunal, you mentioned, the thing about having just a physical item. Well, we've got a survey coming up, and our grand prize for that survey is a 3D printer. So maybe you want to think about how do you integrate a 3D printer into the solution.
That would be cool.
So. I have an example right here of how we could use a 3D printer in this scenario. I mean, think about this idea of knowledge. So that's what we want to motivate agents towards. So, okay, so how do we gamify that? What if you create something like a fellowship of knowledge and you unite them under a quest like Gandalf did for the Fellowship of the Ring? And the quest is to infuse knowledge across the department so that we can better serve our customers. And as people collaborate by sharing knowledge, adding to the KB, being consistent to search for the KB and optimize search terms every time they get a customer interaction, they at some point acquire enough credibility or knowledge, whatever, to get a Lord of the Rings 3D printed character. And they get that, or some kind of virtual NFT that's a Lord of the Rings theme. They get to join the fellowship of the knowledge, and then they are ordained then to go out and help bring other people into the fellowship of knowledge. So, I mean, these are the type of things that you can do to motivate the right behaviors.
Right.
Nate, I can see Gandalf saying.
Go ahead.
I can see Gandalf say. I can see Gandalf saying, "You shall pass."
I love it.
And, I'm not a sales guy, so I was always a little bit, kind of turned off by the big thermometer on the wall that people were filling in with a red marker as it went. This whole idea, you start to build, everybody's got their 3D model, and whoever gets that thing built first, well, there you are, right? It's physically in front of you thing. It's a pretty cool idea. So we'll get off, we'll get out of that rat hole a little bit, but we've talked a lot about how behavior can be shaped, encouraged, et cetera, using gamification. But kind of going beyond that, what sort of incentives do you see that are typically related? Kunal, if you could start with that, what sort of incentives have you seen contact centers use as part of that gamification process?
Yeah, so we categorize them in our business as intrinsic and extrinsic motivator, which is a very simplest way to explain that. It would be intrinsic means something I do anyways, and I'm in a sense that I'm motivated to do it, but I'm not expecting a physical reward on the back of it. Like, for example, I've got a best buddy in a contact center I work with, and they have a tough day and have a tough shift, and I swap with them and I feel good about it, and if I go to you and say, "Oh, great job, I'm going to give you $500 for that," I'm going to go like, "Oh, I would have done it anyways because my best buddy," right? So that's an intrinsic motivator, and we want to promote that intrinsic behavior, like help your team member, help your teammate, mentor them. If somebody's just joined, say hello, like little things. That's what we call as intrinsic behaviors, and we motivate them differently. Like, for example, we appreciate what you do. You can go home early by 15 minutes today or half hour, or take a day off. Choose your day and just take it off. Or we can actually, if you're a social type of person, we can actually give you, an ability to organize a social event and give you a bit of a budget, get everybody together from business point of view. And then there is an extrinsic part, right, which is what we're seeing as well. And I've got some funny data to share. But we are actually integrated with a company that we work with out of Denmark, a company called LoyLogic. And what we effectively do is we deliver gift cards across 180 countries around the world. So you can actually convert points into physical gift cards, and that could be, Walmart vouchers, like $100, $200, and stuff like that. And we're seeing a whole raft of data around it. Like, we have made these rewards to stay, like, to last longer. Like, there are some rewards where you have to get like 20,000 points and things like that. And Nate, we're trying to tackle that retention as an issue. It costs in America, I think, $10,000 if the trained agent leaves, right? So it's such an important lever. And we're using rewards to actually get them to that particular level, so they stay there and stay there longer. And we actually see rewards a big part of it, but how you apply those rewards into what scenarios, we have to be careful. We don't want to reward a wrong behavior either.
Great. Vern, can you add on to that? Any thoughts?
Yeah, I think that when we take a look at the agent, we see them as just in a virtual cockpit of things to manage, right? There's 3 screens, there's five dashboards, and and there's a headset on them, right? They literally are like gamers in many ways, right? And I think that when I take a look at this person and how do I kind of incentivize them with so much to manage, one of the things that Kunal has talked to us about is, man, if you have a bad call, give them a break. Take them off the queue. You send them an analysis to figure that out. Play some music through the headset and get them reset, and give them the space to recover from some of these calls, because they're not all that great sometimes, right? So I think that if we take care of the agent, that's motivating to them as well. Give space to recover, give space to think about it. Kunal calls it the Zen zone, and I call it the cockpit, right? I mean, it's a constant battle half the time, and you need a break, right? So I think that employers that allow you to do that, like we like to think that an employer can say, you know what? You can work anywhere. Take this headset. It's going to camouflage you. And if you need a break, just take a break. Maybe the metrics in the AI tell you that one day. There's some contact centers that are there today or getting there, and there's some that are just beginning that journey, right? But we see that there's a lot of information based on that. You can do a lot with that to create a good space for agents. right? Because
Sure.
when this is on for me, I'm in the zone, right? This replaces all the white noise generators that I invested in a brick and mortar, and it replaces all the sound paneling from a facility standpoint. I don't need to invest in all that, which saves millions of dollars, in a facility, and you just recreate it here in my little virtual office. People want freedom, and people want to be able to, play games,
Sure.
have fun.
And Vern, you're one of the great motivators in the industry. I've seen you in action at trade shows, and obviously I've interacted with you during our webinars. What are your views on that in terms of incentives and how that can be tied into gamification?
So I think there are a lot of incentives like, what Kunal was talking about. For us, there are a lot of people use us as an incentive. Oh, if you're performing well, we'll give you a better headset, or we'll make you wireless and things like that. So from that standpoint, we have a lot to offer there. Sure. But, just like Kunal and Nate have said, there's a lot of intrinsic incentives that you get out of it. Everything from gift cards at the end of the month or whatever, just the pure competition that comes out of gamification, right? Sometimes you just want to compete. And like Nate was saying, is that some of the best floors out there in their metrics are the ones that do compete, right? And whether or not you have gamification involved from a software perspective, those are some of your great teams out there.
Yep. And I apologize. I misspoke a little bit. I was actually throwing that at Nate, but I got distracted by the music lesson that's happening in my basement. It's all my fault.
I did bring my penny whistle, Tim, if you want some more of that, but I think I'll answer the question instead. Vern, you make a great point there. It depends on what we're trying to motivate. There are times where the competitive levers work, especially as we bring in some of these customer success principles, and people are not any longer just trying to resolve issues. They're trying to unlock additional capabilities and guide customers towards meaningful outcomes, some of them sales-based. Competitive levers can work in those type of conversations. So it's not as cut and dry as collaborative versus competitive. You just got to be smart about how you're applying them. So I'm going to try and bring some of these threads together. I mean, Vern, talking so well about the freedom that can come with this headset, Kunal talking about the extrinsic and intrinsic motivators, which is brilliant in this dialogue. I mean, think about this. I'm going to use UL. I worked for UL forever. And there was always opportunities to serve UL as an ambassador in these really exciting ways. So this is where you're bringing the culture in to your gamification levers. So, I mean, as an example, we partnered with Disney, and somebody got to go out to Disney and be a safety science ambassador at a robotics program on site at Disney. Somebody got to go to Kansas to be a safety person at a robotics competition there. And so there's these different opportunities for people to go out and be in the community, be an ambassador for the brand, which Vern is enabled by the equipment. Kunal, which is representing what we want. We're trying to create company ambassadors here. We're trying to motivate them towards the right behaviors and reward them with meaningful things, which is the opportunity to be an ambassador on steroids. Go be an ambassador in Hawaii. So I mean that's the type of thing that we want to think about here. Don't just gamify on the side. Gamify in the heart. Gamify in the core.
Yep.
Kunal, can you talk a little bit about that? How do you bring culture into this whole process?
Oh, well, a huge part, right? And that's where it goes back to the point, right? People are so hung up, I still feel, on these KPIs and metrics and how organization is behaving. And yes, Net Promoter Score, CSAT, sales numbers, all those things are important because those are the good measures and good way of looking at it. But are they going to fit into my culture? Is that really understood? Are we going down below? Because what I've seen many times is people worrying about how am I going to look on my report, as opposed to would I actually get the report right? So I've walked into environments where cultures were super toxic, right? Where managers and team leaders were giving feedback to agents in front of other agents. I mean, that's just very demotivating. And then people constantly come and go, and they leave the contact center. Knowledge management systems are not well maintained. All those basic things which are just culturally, people are not incentivized for maintaining knowledge management system. It's simple, right? Like the KPI for somebody is maintaining knowledge management system, it just isn't there in place in that organization. And that may be just the culture. Some organizations don't use technology well, right? Some organizations are very good with technology, but they're not good on the people side. So actually taking all of this in and really creating a behavior program, which would effectively, will get you to those metrics, the CSATs and the NPS and the sales zone and whatnot. But the culture has to be understood, right? And what we effectively do to keep it simple is actually break your culture in 3 or 4 simple parameters. We call it discipline. How disciplined you are as an organization. Do you guys do certain things? And it's not just agents being disciplined here. It's about those knowledge managers, those quality managers, those team leaders. All of them come into that discipline factor, right? Are you guys efficient? Okay. Oh, yeah, I'm efficient with using XYZ system, but that system, I absolutely hate it, right? Then give a challenge to IT guys to fix it, because it is actually clunky and it takes me longer to serve a customer. So it's an organizational culture program, and going deeper, and hence, Mr. Customer Experience Director, you're going to get an awesome result. And explaining that is a big part, and culture plays a huge role. And yes, there would be requirements to change cultures in certain areas in order to get there. But without changing culture, probably not going to get there.
Sure.
Yeah. And I want to say something about that culture piece and kind of go back to what Nate was saying. He brought a good example with Disney, right? You know, when you're a customer wanting to buy that cruise ship, you know, there are bots involved and things like that, but nobody but the agent can project the passion that customer is having for wanting to go on that cruise, right? You still need humans to project the passion of your company. And I think that's what customers really key on. You know, they want to hear your passion for it, mirror their passion, and then at that point, you know, that makes a raving fan of them. And what customers really want, they want to know the secret. You know, these are some secret companies. This is something cool. I can share this tidbit about a product that I like or a service that I really like. And there's something about that I think customers want. And I think that companies want to convey, right? So sounding good, being an agent that feels next door, like your friend telling you a secret, that to me is the culture that I think people want in this service industry, right?
Yeah, I sometimes think of customer service agents as the personality of the company, right? That's who you're dating. Yeah. So it's either going to go well or it's not going to go well based on that first that encounter. So,
yeah.
Okay, Nate, you good on this one? Everybody, let's move on because we are getting a little bit tight on time. We got about 8 minutes left here. So, Kunal, can any contact center implement gamification? Or are there any limits on the type of companies and the type of contact centers that can do this? And, you know, does it matter what larger contact center platform they're working with today?
Yeah, I think anybody and everybody should implement gamification and can implement gamification. It's ability to get together and drive things, and it's now technologies have evolved. We can integrate with almost any technology really that's out there. So there is no size limit. I think anybody and everybody can and must and should implement gamification as a practitioner in the industry.
Sure. Vern, any thoughts on that? Any specific issues that need to be thought about, and the types of companies that really should be out there doing this first?
Yeah, I you know, we're finding success with small and large customers that want to be able to project their best voice, right? And I think that's common, you know, amidst all people in the service industry. So, but I do think that, like, especially in our case, you have to see what is under the hood. Right. A lot of people will take a look at a headset and say a headset's a headset, and even allow their agents to choose whatever they want. Right. Which works, but there are optimal ways to do that too. So from our standpoint, it's always good to look under the hood, see what kind of SDKs we have that you can work with, and find out what headsets can do that you didn't know about. Right.
Sure. Nate, any viewpoint on that? I mean, you've implemented gamification in various kinds of companies. Any limitations that you see? You know, there's companies that are just too small for it, or is it really across the board, any size company?
No, start very simple here. You don't have to roll out a full gamification program. Just find one way to have fun with one work element. You know, at the beginning, there's a team that I serve. I love serving. It's a top 10 Fortune gaming client that I get to serve. and I started playing What's Under the Stool with them. And I literally put a weird thing on a stool and cover it up, and they have to ask yes or no questions to figure out what it is. That sounds so silly. They love this. And then we have a simple kudos document where they just recognize one another for the ways that they've helped each other during the week. And we spin a virtual prize wheel, and somebody gets a $25 Amazon card. That's it. And it has made a tremendous difference in the culture of that team. So start small, find ways to have a little bit of fun and bring people together towards meaningful outcomes, connect it to the work, and then build up on that. Be like, wow, here's the top call drivers. Here's the top DSAT call drivers that we have. Let's find some ways to train people up on this, to change the way that we're sharing information and do it in a fun and exciting way. You can do this regardless of the size, the budget. There are ways, and I would love to be a resource to brainstorm with you. I love creative conversations like this. Happy to help if I can.
Great. I appreciate that. So let's get into some of the nitty-gritty that the operations folks are going to have to deal with, right? So, Kunal, what do you see in terms of the excuse me, to Nate's point? Obviously, there's any number of ways this can be implemented. There's any size of implementation that could be going on. But can you kind of give a thumbnail of how long it takes to implement a solution like this?
Yeah, so again, it depends on how large the program is, but typically anywhere between 2 to 3 weeks, I think, just getting together, figuring out all those different things, get the right stakeholders engaged. Technology, I think, is the easy part in this, right? It's just sort of showing you stuff and things like that. I mean, I wouldn't say it's easy, but it's an enabler, right? But having that entire change management program, getting everybody together is super important. But 2 to 3 weeks, typically, you can actually implement gamification if integrations are simple. We have implemented gamification programs that's super successful in as small as 6 days, 5 days sometimes. And, that's not because of our technology alone. It's also because contact centers were ready. They were like, oh, we want to do this. We're excited about gamification. We're going to do this. And they're coming up with a lot of different ideas. We want this as a reward. Oh, can we do this? Can we do that? And all those fun stuff. And if I'm an operations manager, we ask this question all the time to them. How many people in your business actually want to have gamification? And answer most of the time is yes. So it has to be priority. So it's all about prioritization. And we say, if people want to have fun at work and they're working from home, yeah, let's implement it. People are waking up to it, especially in work from home environment. I guess it's much more realistic thing to achieve and do now. And people are prioritizing it as well.
Right. And it's been obvious from the conversation we've had today, this is an ongoing process. This is an evolutionary process. You can't just stick it in and hope that it works and then continue to use it just the same way. It's got to be a live program. Yeah. Okay. Go ahead,
Tim. From my standpoint here, you can just create infrastructure. Like, this headset here can already just get you started, but can be gamified and future-proof you, later on, right? So, so that when it's time, Kunal can pull what he needs. But in the meantime, you still get really good noise cancellation. So there's no reason to not start now.
Sure. And for somebody who's trying to convince the CFO, right, I want this budget, I really want to do this, I think it's going to be worthwhile. What are the types of ways that they should calculate ROI and bring that to the meeting with the CFO? I know we've talked around a lot of that, but if there's anything you want to add, I appreciate it.
It's super simple. Actually, the gamification is the simplest to calculate ROI if it works. And I'll explain, right? Because we're still measuring the metrics like average handle time, net promoter score, CSAT, some of the ones Nate touched on, and they have direct quantifiable value, right? So for example, average handle time right now center is 5 minutes. And after implementing gamification, came down to 4 minutes across 100 agents. I can say, oh, I'm saving 100 multiply a minute, right? And you can calculate value on the back of it. What I've seen, and I've come from data background, as you know, Tim, data programs don't deliver. I haven't seen them deliver this kind of ROI that gamification does. Gamification actually is very quick to get the return on investment. And if you keep investing in it, you'll just see great results. So it's super easy to quantify. We actually, on Data Game's website, have an ROI calculator. You can just use that and punch numbers in there. but it's very easy to calculate.
And Nate, what sort of soft ROI should be part of that conversation as you're trying to convince leadership to invest?
Yeah, can all hit the hard ROI. The soft is pretty easy. Think about that executive. What is keeping them up at night? There's a problem. There's a challenge that they're wrestling with. When intelligently applied, gamification can help to solve that problem. So that's how you structure this conversation. If it's employee retention, we have something that we can do here. If it's employee engagement, if it's anything customer related and the quality of the engagement with that customer, this is something that can help with that. I mean, Ann has a great question over here. There's a staffing shortage out there. How do you have time for this? Well, I mean, I would say the staffing shortage is because people don't want to work in environments that aren't fun for them. They've left those jobs for something different and something that engages them. You want to be bringing people into you because you have this type of philosophy there, because you make work exciting and fun. And it's not just remedial traditional customer service. It's something where they are free to serve and serve well and connect with others in exciting ways. So, I mean, that's what we're trying to create. That's when you get to benefit from the Great Resignation, because the best talent is coming to you. Does it take a little bit of time? Yeah. To start small? Yeah. But then as you build up and get into a cadence where this is just part of your culture and part of your personality, it's just what you do.
Great. So we're at the top of the hour, and I don't hate to end this conversation because I'm having so much fun with it. But if we could just kind of get a nice little wrap up here, starting with Nate. Looking forward next 12, 18 months, what do you see as the most important trend or developments that we should be paying attention to in this space? And I know that that's a huge topic, so let's just try to boil it down as much as you can.
Yep. I will land the plane quick on this. I mean, in my mind, mission-driven CX. We are captured by brands that are taking a bold identity right now in terms of who they are, their personality, their identity as an organization, the ways that they're serving, and they're trying to find companies that are convicted about what they do, the ways that they serve their community, and bringing in brand ambassadors that can represent that authentically. This has huge implications to a customer service environment. Loyalty is harder than ever to win today. We have to do it really well and take a bold stance about who we are as an organization and how we bring people in as brand ambassadors and how they get to serve in these customer service roles. So gamification is just one of many levers that we as leaders need to pull right now to capture the hearts and minds of our people first, so that we can ultimately capture the hearts and minds of our customers and earn that loyalty through mission-driven CX.
Great, thank you. Kunal, what are your thoughts on what's really cool that's coming down the pike in this area?
I'm excited about data, right? As a data guy, there is so much data in contact centers, man. I can't believe it, right? There is so much data, and it's not connected. It's not talking to each other. And I think the biggest trend that we are seeing is using that data and using techniques like gamification to harness that data and make it available across the organization. So the simple word for me is data.
Got it. Vern, you're going to take us out. What do you see in the next 12, 18 months that got you excited?
Yeah, I think for us, it's about the people, right? You know, we're a wearable on people's heads. And so we are always asking them what they think about their jobs in the contact center, how they feel about it. And because it's an intimate relationship with our device, right? And so from what I see is more concentration on agent experience, how things like gamification play out with them, you know, and that's the big thing in the industry right now. AX equals good CX, right? So
Sure.
The more that we can provide for this multifaceted player, this person that we can make a professional, their lives, right? That's what we're focused on, is creating a great experience for them so that they can just do their job without thinking, right?
Great. And unfortunately, that is all we have time for today. Thank you to everyone in the audience who joined us. Thank you, gentlemen. This was a really, really fun conversation. As a reminder, everyone will receive a follow-up email that includes a link to view the recording of today's presentation. So if you found this event rather useful, please share that with your colleagues. And then once you leave the event, a short survey is going to pop up in your browser window. We'd very much appreciate if you share your feedback on the webinar. It helps us tailor our programs to your interests and make sure that we're serving you the best we can. So everyone have a great day. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tim. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
See ya.